Welcome to the Moms for Wellness podcast on SM Enlightenment Radio or TV. This is a podcast for moms who are passionate about being healthy and leading their kids to do the same. Welcome back, moms. I'm so glad you are here. And I have a question for you today. Is your child anxious? Or maybe do you know someone whose child suffers from anxiety? And my guess is the answer is probably a resounding yes, because the thing is, it is very common nowadays to just have anxious children, to know people who are anxious. And I think one, it is getting a lot of attention, but also I feel like life is very different now than it was 10, 20, 30 years ago. So there's a lot more things that are happening at a faster pace and things attracting our kids' attention, a lot of different things to cause anxiety, where there were definitely things to cause anxiety before, but I don't think it was as pronounced, as fast paced. And there are also a lot more diagnoses these days of various things, a lot of different things, of which anxiety is a main component. So, I think it's safe to assume that you probably have a child that has anxiety at some point or another, has dealt with that, or you're aware of someone whose child has. So, what I want to do is share with you different ideas, different ways that you can help your child through their anxiety. And it has a wide spectrum of the things that I'm going to share with you, from physical things to do, from things talking with them. So, a lot of different things, but I'm going to give you strategies and tools today. So, this is going to be part one in a two-part series. So, we'll have part one and part two of different tips and tricks to be able to help your child through anxiety. And I got a lot of ideas from two different sources as well as just my own experiences. So, one of the places was an article by Annika Nayak and Jacqueline Lopez Whitney in their article in Business Insider India. And then also by the author Erin Leba from Psychology Today, and also just different things of my own experiences as well. So, drawing on a lot of different things to put these lists together for you. So here's part one. Number one is know the symptoms. Okay, so it's very common for anxiety to manifest itself through physical conditions, right? And so your child will probably be more likely to tell you about those things outright than to say that they are anxious. So, and they might not even be able to necessarily identify it or even put it into words. So, those physical ailments, they'll be able to tell you, like, my stomach hurts. So, some of those symptoms that they could be having that their anxiety is manifesting itself through would be headache, nausea, shortness of breath, shakiness, stomach pains, like I just mentioned, changes in appetite or weight. So, long term anxiety, there we're talking about less willingness to try new things. So, again, that's long term anxiety, outbursts of anger, increased crying, avoidance of things that they used to previously enjoy, and decreased ability to bounce back from new unexpected changes in their lives. So one of the key things is just know the symptoms. What does it look like in your child? How does anxiety often manifest itself? Because they often have a pattern. So you can kind of know that sometimes those are things that are really being caused by anxiety. So that's number one. Just know what the symptoms are and be aware of that and be looking for that. All right. Number two is to help your child identify the trigger, because there's a lot of power in being able to walk your child through this process and have them see what is happening and to be able to identify it for themselves. And then that gives them the power to be able to be in the driver's seat and to have that awareness and then take on that control themselves. So this might be difficult, especially depending on the age of the child. But this is still, nevertheless, a very good thing to start doing with them, even at a young age. So open up a discussion with them and see if it can come out through the conversation of if they can see what the trigger was. And if it's difficult to pinpoint in that conversation, then just walk through your child's day together and just see if you can find it with them through that conversation. Some of the common anxiety triggers, I don't think it's going to be any surprise to all of you smart moms out there. But some of those anxiety triggers are academic pressures. At the time of this recording, it's at the start of the school year. You may be listening at any time. It doesn't really matter because you could be in summer school. So academic pressures are there a lot of the year. Major changes in life, like moving or a death in the family, obviously, those can bring on major anxiety, abuse or neglect, and conflict at home. And I will also even say perceived conflict at home. Sometimes there aren't really things, or it doesn't seem like a big deal to you, but your child could pick up on the tension and think it's a bigger deal than it really is. And so just having that awareness of what some of those triggers are for them and then identify that, and then you can work through from there what to do. So that's a really key thing. And then the more that they are able to process through and think through that and identify their triggers, then this is a skill that they will be able to have and continually use because newsflash, kids aren't the only ones who get anxious, right? Like, us moms get anxious too. You dads out there too. Like, everybody has anxiety. Everybody gets anxious. And so, this is a great thing that even if you aren't using the skill, for you to walk through and think, like, what does set me off? What does get me anxious? And then that awareness piece is really, really key. All right. So, that's number two is learn the trigger, know the trigger. Number three is validate their fears or worries. And this is a really important step. And I think it is something that can get just passed over by very well meaning parents, or we can say things that aren't necessarily in the child's best interest to help them through this process. So you'll see what I mean, because validating their fears is helping them realize that this is something that is real to them. This is something that is causing a reaction in them. And you understand, you're letting them know that you understand that this is a big deal to them. So for example, don't say things like, don't worry. Instead, say, there's or don't say don't worry, and don't say there's nothing to be afraid of. Okay, so those are things that aren't going to be helpful for them. Instead, of saying just stop thinking about it, try this, try, it takes courage to face your fears. So try saying that next time that your child has some anxiety. It takes courage to face your fears. Instead of saying, oh, give me a smile, come on, buck up, instead try, I also feel sad when saying goodbye, or when fill in the blank. So instead of saying, I'm sorry you feel this way, instead say, or try this one, how can I help or support you through this? Okay. And I think the last one was especially interesting because I'm sorry you feel this way. Like, I would say that out of a genuine, like, sadness that I am sorry you feel this way, but that could be perceived in a wrong way by them. So instead, just how can I help and support you through this? Let's move forward through this. And just remember to, by saying that we are validating their feelings, does not mean that you are agreeing with them in how they handle their situation. So, for example, like if they're lashing out in their anger, they're saying mean words, they're throwing a temper tantrum, you are not condoning that behavior, that activity. You are simply letting them know that they are being heard, that you understand their feelings, and then you're going to meet them in that place and then go forward with them from there. So, just that act of validating their fears, validating their worries, because the reality is, like I said in the last one, it's kind of a theme here. Like, we have anxiety too. It's not like it just stops as a child. So the more that they can understand that this is normal, A lot of people, everyone feels anxious and has worries and fears. And so let's figure out how to process through this and move forward. So that's number three, validate their fears and worries. All right, number four is stimulate the vagus nerve. So, this is really good, really practical one. So, stimulating your child's vagus nerve. So, that's located on both sides of the voice box. Okay. So, that can interrupt that fight or flight mode and send a signal to your child's brain that he or she is not under attack. So, it's a physical sending a message to your brain, letting them know, hey, you're not under attack because that's that fear, that fight or flight. It just, your body goes into that mode. And so you want to do a physical thing to bring it back. So then a natural question is, what are ways to stimulate the vagus nerve? Well, here are some. You can chew gum. Okay. So have a pack of gum handy, when they're getting anxious. Give them some gum to chew. Sing or hum. So that will activate that nerve. Breathe slowly. So, with roughly equal amounts of time breathing in and out. Okay. So, that will help to stimulate the nerve as well. Eat a piece of dark chocolate. This is my favorite one. Like, so, I don't need an excuse of being anxious to be able to have dark chocolate. I know for kids, like, probably dark chocolate is not going to be their favorite, but for me, that lights me up. That makes me happy. So, all I needed was an excuse to eat dark chocolate. And it's also a parasympathetic regulator as well. So, that's a great thing to do. And then, so if you needed an excuse, moms, to have some dark chocolate in your purse at all times, in case of emergency, here's your excuse. Here's your reason. It's for your kid. And the last one for a way to stimulate the vagus nerve is to gargle with regular water. So that's a tip that if you didn't know this one, so stimulating the vagus nerve help to send a signal to the brain to help calm your child down or you down. Okay. And I just gave you total permission to have your dark chocolate. All right. So that was number four. Number five is offer a positive distraction. So just like when your children were little, maybe yours are little, but they were little and they were misbehaving, and you redirect them to another activity, right? Especially in the toddler stages and they're starting a tantrum, you just redirect them to another activity. So that is a very common parenting move that I'm sure a lot of you have employed. If you haven't, definitely start doing that. It's great. But we can do the same thing, the same method here for anxiety, and only we're distracting them away from anxiety. So it just helps to redirect and get their mind off of that thing that is worrying them. So do whatever your child would be interested in or whatever is available depending on where you are and the anxiety is taking place. Be creative, but some ideas are like reading a favorite book or baking a favorite dessert or painting or playing a sport or dancing to a favorite song or putting together a puzzle, or you get the idea. Just do another activity and redirect them. But the thing is, though, this is a nice distraction, but it is not a permanent solution for the anxiety. Okay. So try saying something like, let's put these feelings to the side for right now and go do something fun until you feel ready to tackle them. So you don't want to be totally evading it and going away from it, but just sometimes they just need a redirection, be able to come back to it and talk through it later. So, redirection is a really great method to use when your child is feeling anxious. All right. So, then number six, tackle the negative thoughts. Ooh, this is so key. This is a big, big one. And truth is, we adults need to work on this too. So be listening along for yourself in this too. We can use these same things for ourselves as well. And in fact, I actually did a whole podcast episode on this. So you can check that out. I'll put it in the show notes, but I did it on self talk. And so you can definitely get a lot of info and a lot of ideas of what it looks like. But basically, what it is it's learning to listen to the thoughts that you have and the things that you are saying to yourself. So if you've ever done this, you know. And if you haven't yet, then you might be in for a shock when you actually do this, okay? But it's so important to be able to help your child stop and pay attention to the way that they are talking to themselves. And then they can change that talk. So the first thing is that you have to be aware of it. You have to know that you are doing it. So they want to catch it, challenge it, and change it. Okay. So by catch it, we mean they have to notice when they have these thoughts, when they have this self talk. Pay attention because the first time that I did this, when I really realized what I was saying to myself, I was shocked. I didn't realize I was so mean to myself in the thoughts that I had and the words that I said to myself. So if we can teach our children when they're younger to be aware of this and to do this, it's gonna make a world of difference for them. So the first part is catch it. Notice they want to notice when they have these thoughts and the self-talk, okay? Then the second part is challenge it. So for example, if they say, "I'm stupid." Well, challenge it. Is that really true? Have I ever done things that are smart? So this will teach them to not just accept every negative thought that comes into their head. It's actually not true. And then after they've challenged it, then the third part is to change it. So now it's time to replace, come up with a phrase to fill that spot. So you can ask them, what would you say to a friend who thought that they were stupid? Then they can use that for themselves. And also, if you are faith based, you can stop and say, well, what does scripture say? Who does God say that I am? And use that to identify who they are and what they are capable of. Okay. So that is number 6. Tackle those negative thoughts. All right. Okay, moving on to number 7. 7 is breathing exercises are a great way to calm anxiety. Okay, so there's a lot of different breathing exercises that you can do. I'll just share a couple of them with you. But one of them is to inhale for 4 counts, hold for 4 counts, and then exhale for 8 counts. Okay, so it's inhale for 4 counts, hold for 4 counts, and then exhale for 8 counts. All right. So that's a really great calming thing to do. Another one is called balloon breathing. So pretending to inflate and deflate an imaginary balloon. So pretending that you're blowing up a balloon and blowing into that balloon slowly and steadily and then having the balloon deflate. Another one is either act like you're blowing bubbles or actually blow bubbles. That's a really great thing because you have to go very slowly and calmly so that the bubble doesn't break. Another one is blow into a pinwheel. So you need to do it at a certain way to be able to get the pinwheel moving. Another one is have a whistling contest. That could be very interesting, especially if they're little and they can't really whistle very well. And then the last idea for breathing is breathe in through the nose and out through the mouth. Okay, so those are a lot of different ways. Those are things you can do that in the car, you can do that standing in line, in the store, like you can do that anywhere. So that's a really great technique to use when your child is anxious. Okay, then number 8 is mindful journaling. So, this is obviously for older children. You have to be able to write and be able to process and think through things. Um, but this is a really great thing to be able to do. Just write out your thoughts. It's powerful to be able to get thoughts out of your head and kind of really process through what the anxiety is. And find out how they best communicate, what calms them, because writing in a journal back and forth can be a really great way of communicating and a really great way of lowering that anxiety. So that's a really great idea if you have a child that communicates well through written words, then having a journal and then you communicate back and forth and have conversations that way, that might be more powerful than actually speaking face to face about their anxieties and really about life, about whatever other things that might be going on. So that's number 8 is mindful journaling. And then number 9, our last one, is movement. Okay. So I talk about this all the time when it comes to relieving stress and increasing creativity and growing productivity and get your body moving and, just all of that. So it's just so important. Like, move your body every day. It's so, so important for so many things, not just for our physical health, which obviously it is. Our bodies need to move, but also for our mental and emotional and social health too. So, movement, we were designed to move. And so it's just so important, such a key component of our overall health and wellness. And this is interesting. Check this out. A large 2020 study found that children who engaged in moderate to vigorous exercise, like biking, playing sports, walking to school, for at least an hour a day, reported lower anxiety. So it's so, so good. It's such a great way to be able to lower that anxiety, reduce the stress. So this movement can come in any form. Obviously, be creative. Some things are, try taking a walk outside, no headphones, no phone. That'll help boost the creativity, the thought process as well, and just reducing that anxiety. Play a sport, go for a swim, take a bike ride, dance to your favorite soundtrack, do something formal like even like art therapy or music therapy that can incorporate movement into it. So, a lot of different ways to think about moving your body, but you might be surprised if you stop and think about like how much did my child get movement, especially if they're sitting all day in school. They didn't get a lot of chances to move around. I mean, school is usually very good about getting them moving, but there's just definitely something to be aware of, and definitely get movement into their routine, into their body. So that is number 9. And so those are 9 ways, 9 practical ways, hands-on things that you can do with your child, for your child, to help reduce their anxiety when you see that they are getting anxious, when you see that they are getting nervous, and to process through with them. So that's what I have for you today. And then that is part 1. And I'll be coming back with part 2. So stay tuned for that one. But that's what I have for you. And I hope it is helpful. Thanks for listening to the Moms for Wellness podcast. That's a wrap. Thanks for joining me on SM Enlightenment Radio or TV, or joining me on the Moms for Wellness podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the Moms for Wellness podcast and leave a 5-star rating or review. It really is helpful, and we would be so grateful. I'm Jenny. Have a good one. Welcome to the Moms for Wellness podcast on SM Enlightenment Radio or TV. This is a podcast for moms who are passionate about being healthy and leading their kids to do the same. Welcome back, moms. I'm so glad you are here. We are here on Moms for Wellness podcast on SM Enlightenment Radio and TV, and we are back for part 2. So we are talking about anxiety in our children. And if you missed part 1, you're going to want to go back and catch that, because I gave a lot of good tips and tricks and ideas of things that you can do to help your child through their anxiety and through their anxious times. And so I am coming back with part two, where we're going to continue on and give you 9 more ways that you can help your child through that anxiety. And again, I wanted to give a shout out to some of my resources. I got a lot of ideas from a variety of places, including Annika Nayak and Jacqueline Lopez Whitney in their article in Business Insider India. And then also from Erin Leba from Psychology Today, and from my own experiences and research as well. So, a lot of different sources, but I want to give credit where credit is due. And so, here's part two. All right. So here's 9 more ways that you can help your anxious child. Okay. So the first one is called cross the midline. All right. So it's interesting, if you remember the last one that we talked about in part one, we talked about movement, right? And so this kind of goes along with that, but it's a specific kind of movement. Okay. So cross the midline is what this is called. So crossing the midline, or moving one's hands, feet, and eyes across to the other side of the body, can help reset the brain. Did you know that? Okay, so research actually suggests that when you move your arms or legs across the center of your body, the brain hemispheres are activated and work together so that you can think both with logic and emotion. Okay, so it's the whole right brain, left brain thing. And the more that you can get them to cross and connect and work together, the better it's going to be for you. So I think this is just really a fascinating one. And I remember learning about this when I homeschooled one of my children. I mean, the brain is an amazing thing. Definitely, if this intrigues you, do some research on it. Go look into this. It's really, really amazing. Very, very interesting. There's a lot of different activities to cover, a lot of different things that you can do with this concept. But this one we're talking about specifically for crossing the body, crossing the midline, for helping to reduce anxiety. So, what does that look like? What are some ideas of ways that you can do that with your child? So, one is cross marches, like the child marches in a place while touching their opposite knee, their right arm touches their left knee. It looks a lot like warm ups that you'll do for sports for your older kids. Windmills, have your child reach out to the side with their arms straight, then pretend that they are windmill, moving their arms in a circle while crossing across the middle of the body. Okay. Um, Wipe the table with one hand. Okay. So you're crossing your hand across the midline. You can walk in a figure eight. You can draw a large side to side figure eight with sidewalk chalk, put it out on the sidewalk for your child, and have him or her walk the figure eight. Okay. So there's a lot of different ways and creative ways that you can get them to do activities that cross the midline. But that is a great way to reduce anxiety and bring that anxiousness down. Okay. So that's number one. Number two is heavy work. Okay. Uh, to which all the parents say, Amen. Yes, put them to work, right? So remember, we are talking about methods to use to help reduce anxiety in your children. So, heavy work activities are any activities that push or pull against the body. Okay. So, it provides input to a child's muscles and joints, and it increases a child's focus and attention, and it centers a child. Okay. So, different things that you can do. Again, you can be very creative with this. You can think about anything that you can do. Some examples are do wall push ups. Okay. So, you're pushing against that, carrying a backpack, pushing a vacuum. So, that's a great thing to do. You're feeling anxious, go that might, help clear things up. If they're feeling anxious, you had them go vacuum, then they might figure things out. Climbing a jungle gym, carrying a pile of books, or pulling a wagon can help kids calm and regulate their emotions. And teachers, if there's any teachers, that are listening, like, those are some things, like, carrying books, like, those are some things that you can have them do in the classroom that help to reduce the anxiety and level and center the child. So that is number two, is heavy work. All right. Number three is to use the step ladder approach to overcoming fears. Okay. So this is just like it sounds like, help. This is in helping your child progress out of their fears, taking them from where they are, and then slowly, step by step, progressing them and going through the process and helping them break away from their anxiety. Okay. So, for example, if your child is afraid of sleeping on their own and they have been sleeping in your bed, and you want to get them from sleeping in your bed to sleeping in their own bed and helping them conquer their fear and their anxiety and work through this, you can use the step ladder approach. Okay. So, for this example, it might look like this. So, first step would be have your child sleep on a mattress on the floor next to your bed. The next step would be have your child sleep on a mattress on the floor, but move it closer to the door away from your bed. Then the next step might be have your child sleep on a mattress on the floor in your room with an agreement that you will put them in their own bed when they fall asleep. The next step might be have your child fall asleep in their own bedroom with you in the room. The next step might be have your child fall asleep in their own bedroom with the agreement that you will check on them every couple of minutes until they fall asleep on their own. The next step might be have your child fall asleep in their own bedroom with the light on. And then the next step might be have your child fall asleep in their own bedroom with just a nightlight on. So you can see the progression that you can make. So that's just an example of what it could look like in that kind of scenario. But obviously, apply that to whatever the anxiety or the fear is and think through what might be the gradual steps that we can work through to help them get to this goal, get to this end point. So that way you are seeing progress. You are moving them through processing this fear, moving them through it and getting them to the point where they can function and they can live, that they have worked through that anxiety. So that could be a really good opportunity for you to be able to help them work through that. Okay. So that was number three, use the step ladder approach to overcoming their fears. All right. Number four, use humor. I mean, like, why not? Research suggests that exposure to humor significantly reduces anxiety, right? Laughter is good medicine. We that phrase has been around for forever for a reason. So humor can distract, it can relax muscles, it can reframe, it can heal, it can release endorphins that combat stress. So again, just like movement, humor can do so many things for your overall health, for the body, other than just be a good time. Okay. So try playing a goofy game with your child, or watching slapstick cartoons together, or reading a funny book together, or telling jokes like, are you ready for these? What has four wheels and flies? Anyone? Anyone? A garbage truck. All right, there's a good one. All right, here's another one. Can a kangaroo jump higher than the Empire State Building? Of course. The Empire State Building can't jump. Of course, right? Yeah. I mean, yes, these are so good, right? Okay, last one. Last one. Thank you very much. Maybe I missed my calling. Maybe I should have been a stand-up comic. Okay, last one. Why did the math book look so sad? Because it had so many problems. That was a good one. Yes. I know. It was so good. All right. So have your, you know what? There are books that are like books for 6-year old jokes or 7-year-old jokes, or like look them up, have your kid like read them. So that would be a great thing. Like if you can't come up with any jokes, use the ones I gave you. Don't say I didn't help you out. Don't say I didn't give you material. And or just have them get their own joke books and pull that out when they're feeling anxious and start telling jokes to each other. All right. So use humor, whatever that looks like for you and your child, in whatever situation you are in. All right. Number five, walk through the worst case scenario with them. Okay. So this is again processing through, helping them think through, what does this look like? So ask them, what would the worst case scenario be if their worries came true, and walk through what would happen. And oftentimes they build up the what if so big in their head, and they don't even realize that really is something that they can live through and they can work through. And what would the end result be, and how would we, like if they're worried about getting lost, and how you would find them, and just whatever the things that are causing them anxiety, process through. And obviously decide based on the age of your child. But the more that you can process through, because often we just have the fear and it just clouds us and it just sits there, and that's all we can think through. And we can't look beyond that and be like, well, what if that did happen? Then what would life look like? What would that mean? What would we do? And working through those scenarios, because I feel like the what if is a huge cause of anxiety. And if you can kind of reason through that and process through that and think through that, that can really help get you grounded and settle you in like, okay, I have a plan if these things happen. It's not just a huge what if that's hanging out there. Okay. So that's number 5. Number 6. Number 6 is reflect. All right. So if kids are anxious yet make it through an activity anyway, helping them reflect can build resilience and strength for the next time. So later on, they got through the episode, they got through the issue, and then sit down and talk to them and ask them some questions. Help them reflect on it. So it could look like this. You can ask them, on a scale of 1 to 10, how hard was it? Okay. The next question you can ask them is, was it harder or easier than another tough activity? Another question you can ask them is, what one thing helped you get through it okay? And then another thing you can ask them is, what one thing did you end up enjoying about the activity? Because it's not always all bad. They might be really anxious about something and like, oh, it wasn't that big of a deal. So it kind of goes with the one before. The one before, we're talking through the potential scenario. This one, you're sitting down after the situation, after you got through it. You had anxiety, but you did it and you got through it. And now let's reflect on what happened? What were some things that you were afraid of? What worked out? What helped make that work out? So, those are some questions that you can use to be able to sit down with your child and reflect with them and talk them through. And that's a really great technique to be able to use to help them walk through their fears and really conquer them. So, that is number 6. Number 7, this is a great one, parents. Model helpful coping strategies. So, we as parents, this is our whole overall theme of this podcast, Moms for Wellness, is we go the way and we show the way. So, we want to be full of health. And we want to teach our children to do that. And often they will see us with the changes that we make and the decisions that we make, and will help influence them in those ways of health. And so this is one of those ways, is by us modeling good coping strategies. Okay. So us modeling how to effectively cope with our anxiety is one of the best ways for our children to be able to handle their stress and their worry. They get to see us in action. And honestly, it's not always very pretty. So remember that they're always watching, right? But this is a good reminder to put on a good show. Like, do the things, like, model what you want them to be doing. Okay. It tells them that they're not alone in their worry, and it shows them how to handle it and still be a productive, involved citizen. So you could say things like, when I start to worry, I like to write down in a journal so I can get it out of my head. Or saying things like, if I feel nervous, I take a few deep breaths to calm myself down. How do you feel about trying that the next time you feel worried about something? So that's a great way to be able to begin a conversation or just talk about your fears and connect it with them, and giving them techniques and tips and tricks to be able to, for them to be able to use as well. And the thing is, be real with them, okay? Especially as they get older, when they ask you things about your anxiety or worries, be honest with them, because if we put up a facade that everything is fine and we don't worry about anything, it's a lie, right? It's just not true. And it makes them feel like they are dealing with something extra, that it doesn't help them see you handle it and you be an example to them. So model good coping strategies for anxiety, and help by the modeling and through the conversations with them, teach them to be able to do the same. So that is number 7, model helpful coping strategies. All right, number 8, consider seeing a pediatric professional, or depending on your child, like, well, it would go all the way up to 18. So any age would be able to see a pediatric professional. So the thing is, while worries and anxieties are a part of life, if their worries get in the way of normal life activities, or if they keep going long past the stressful situation has been taken care of, then it might be something to look into and talk to a professional. So, some signs of anxiety disorder are behavioral changes such as moodiness, anger outbursts, clinginess, or crying, consistent negative thoughts or worrying, withdrawing from family or friends, avoiding things that they used to enjoy, frequent complaints of stomach or head pain, and sleep problems such as waking up in the middle of the night or having nightmares. So, those are all things that are used as markers for looking at anxiety disorders. So, if you, as the parent, see that these are some of the things that your child is dealing with well past the time of getting past the trigger, the issue that caused the anxiety, then it might be time to consider talking to a pediatric professional. So there's just some thoughts to be able to help you process through that. And then number 9, the last of our tips and tricks for you for helping your child work through anxiety is also consider seeing a functional medical doctor or a functional nutritionist, okay? Because there could be some physical or hormonal imbalances playing in there as well. And the gut is a huge, huge part of our mental health, and it is related to anxiety. Did you know that? So, do consider looking into gut health issues. So, definitely seeing a functional medical doctor or a functional nutritionist. They can help walk you through and answer those questions, look into those things that are possibly a lot of things that you might have never thought of, those kinds of connections. So, just a couple of thoughts just along that realm, a few things to um, help with your gut health. And these are just in general. Definitely check with your DO or your ND first, go see a medical professional. But here are some considerations, some things to think about. Like for gut health, probiotics, prebiotics, enzymes, they all aid in digestion and they help to restore the gut flora. So that's a great way of helping to rebuild the gut and to help heal the gut. Another supplement is L-theanine, and that reduces anxiety and stress. It promotes relaxation. It helps to improve sleep. And then another supplement, magnesium. And this is really interesting. Some sources report that up to half the population is deficient in magnesium. So that's crazy. Magnesium does so many things for your body, so many things. But two of the things that are most pertinent to our conversation are that it helps with sleep and anxiety, among many other things. So, those are just a couple of things if you want to start doing some of your own research and looking into things, and looking for supplements and ways to support your gut and things to help. But definitely do see a functional medical doctor or a functional nutritionist to be able to get more guidance and direction in that. So, that's what I have for you. Go use these tips and tricks for your anxious child. Use them to be able to help calm them, help process and work through these things with your child. I would love to hear from you for what works. If you use any of the things that I shared in part 1 or here in part 2, or let me know what other things that you are trying. Oh, I have one more. So, this is a bonus tip, tip number 10. um, there are tapping techniques. And so I don't know if you're familiar with these. I don't know the official name for them, but there's tapping. There's an order that you would tap on your face in different parts of your face. And there's a specific order. I don't know the exact, I don't remember it, but you go through this process and it helps to calm your system, kind of like we were talking about the vagus nerve, here calming that, doing things so that helps with the connection and reducing anxiety as well. So that's your bonus tip. Definitely look into that as well. That's something that I'm sure that you could look up and figure out and be able to start employing. But that's a really, really great thing to use. So if you have other tips and tricks that have been very helpful for you and your child, or that you know of that a friend has used, definitely let me know. Reach out, DM me on Instagram. If you have like a picture of it, or some, what you're doing, put it on stories, tag me on it on Instagram. I would love to see that. I would love to be able to see what kinds of things that you are finding are helpful for the things that you are doing, or that you got ideas from in here, part two, or in part one. If you didn't listen to part one, definitely go back and check out part one as well. So that's what I have for you. And I can't wait to hear from you and to find out what is working well for you. Take care. That's a wrap. Thanks for joining me on SM Enlightenment Radio or TV, or joining me on the Moms for Wellness podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the Moms for Wellness podcast and leave a 5-star rating or review. It really is helpful, and we would be so grateful. I'm Jenny. Have a good one.